In the depths of space, where silence reigns supreme and stars burn like distant funeral pyres, humanity learned a terrible truth. We were never meant to be alone. But sometimes the greatest weapon against the darkness isn't technology or firepower. It's the one person everyone thought was dead. Commander Sarah Chun had been the finest tactical officer the Terran Defense Force had ever produced. Her strategies had saved billions. Her innovations had turned the tide of 3 major conflicts. And then, 2 years ago, she simply vanished during a routine patrol mission near the Kepler Nebula. No distress signal. No reiki. No trace. The official report listed her as Kia, killed in action. The memorial service was attended by thousands. Her name was etched in the Hall of Heroes alongside humanity's greatest defenders. But Admiral Marcus Kane knew better. He knew because he was the one who had sent her on that mission. He knew because what happened to Sarah Chun wasn't death. It was something far worse and infinitely more valuable. Now, as an alien armada of unimaginable power approaches Earth, as humanity's greatest fleets crumble like paper before an enemy that seems to know their every move, Kane makes a call that will either save the human race or damn it forever. The transmission is brief. 3 words that will change everything. Sarah, come home. The quantum communicator crackled to life in the dead of night, its ethereal blue glow cutting through the darkness of Admiral Marcus Kane's quarters aboard the TDS Prometheus. The frequency was one he'd memorized long ago, one that shouldn't exist anymore, one that belonged to a ghost. Kane's weathered hands trembled slightly as he reached for the device. At 63, he'd seen more wars than most men could imagine, had made decisions that cost millions of lives to save billions more. But this simple communication device terrified him more than any enemy fleet ever could. The message was brief, transmitted in the old military code they developed together during the Centauri campaign 15 years ago. Only 2 people in the entire galaxy knew that cipher, and one of them was supposed to be dead. Package received. Returning to sender. Authentication. Crimson 77 Delta. Kane's blood turned to ice. Crimson 77 Delta was Sarah Chin's personal authentication code, one she'd used for the most classified operations during her career. The same code she'd used on her final mission 2 years ago, when she'd volunteered for an assignment that wasn't supposed to exist. The Admiral stood slowly, his joints protesting after another sleepless night spent coordinating humanity's failing defense against the hegemony. The alien invasion force had appeared 6 months ago at the edge of the Sol system, their massive bioships bristling with weapons that seemed to bend the very laws of physics. Every conventional strategy had failed. Every tactical innovation had been anticipated and countered with frightening precision. It was almost as if the enemy knew exactly how humans thought, how they fought, how they planned. Kane walked to his viewport, gazing out at the assembled remnants of the Terran Defense Force. What had once been the pride of human engineering now looked like a collection of wounded animals, their hulls scarred by weapons that cauterized metal and left strange, organic-looking burns. The TDS Valiant drifted past, its port side completely gone, revealing the twisted wreckage where 300 souls had been vaporized in seconds by a hegemony plasma beam. The numbers were stark and terrifying. Of the original 12 fleet groups that had moved to intercept the invaders, only 3 remained combat effective. The hegemony ships seemed almost alive, their hulls shifting and adapting in real time to human weapons. Conventional missiles were absorbed and somehow converted into energy for the alien vessels. Plasma cannons were reflected back with devastating accuracy. Even nuclear warheads simply disappeared when they struck the enemy hulls, as if the very matter was being converted into something else entirely. Kane's personal communicator chimed with an urgent message from Fleet Command. The latest battle reports from the Mars Defense Grid painted an even grimmer picture. Admiral Zhang's task force had engaged a hegemony scouting fleet near Phobos and been completely annihilated. 37 ships, 15,000 personnel, gone in less than an hour. The alien strategy was becoming clear. They weren't trying to destroy humanity quickly. They were studying human tactics, learning from each engagement, becoming more efficient with every battle. It was surgical, methodical, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. Kane closed his eyes and remembered the conversation that had started this nightmare. 2.5 years ago, in this very room, he'd sat across from Commander Sarah Chun and outlined an operation so classified that it existed in no official records, known only to himself, Sarah, and the Secretary of Defense. "The intelligence is clear, Sarah," he'd said then. "The Kepler Nebula isn't empty. Something's out there, something that's been watching our expansion into the outer systems. The probe data suggests structures, possibly even a civilization that's been observing us for decades." Sarah had listened with that intense focus that had made her the youngest person ever promoted to tactical commander. Her dark eyes, sharp with intelligence, had absorbed every detail as Kane outlined their suspicions about a non-human intelligence that had been conducting long-term surveillance of human space. "You want me to make first contact," she'd said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "I want you to find out what they know about us," Kane had replied, and, more importantly, what they're planning to do with that knowledge. The mission had been designated as routine patrol duty for security purposes. Sarah would take a modified long-range scout ship, equipped with experimental stealth technology and advanced sensors, into the heart of the Kepler Nebula. If she found evidence of alien activity, she was to observe, record, and, if possible, establish peaceful contact. What none of them had expected was that Sarah would simply vanish. The search and rescue operations had continued for months. Every available ship had combed through the nebula's swirling gases and cosmic debris. They found nothing, no wreckage, no ion trails, no sign that the TDS Whisper had ever existed. Eventually, the official conclusion was that her ship had suffered a catastrophic failure, possibly due to the experimental stealth systems, and been completely vaporized. Kane had grieved along with the rest of the fleet. Sarah Chun had been more than an exceptional officer. She'd been like a daughter to him, brilliant and dedicated and absolutely fearless in her pursuit of protecting humanity. Her loss had left a void in the command structure that had never been filled. But now, with that simple coded message, everything changed. Kane activated his personal terminal and began composing a reply using the same cipher. His fingers moved slowly across the quantum keyboard, each character carefully considered. If this really was Sarah, if she was somehow still alive after 2 years in the depths of unknown space, then her situation was undoubtedly complicated. The response needed to convey urgency without revealing too much through potentially monitored channels. Sender location compromised. New package required urgently. Authorization Omega Black 7. Retrieve package coordinates to follow. He encoded the message with additional layers of encryption, then added a final, personal touch, a reference to a conversation they'd had years ago about her concerns over human expansion into potentially hostile territory. If this was really Sarah, she'd understand both the operational meaning and the personal verification. The transmission sent, Kane settled back to wait. The hegemony fleet continued its inexorable advance toward Earth, their massive bioships moving through space like living creatures swimming through cosmic seas. Intelligence estimated they would reach the inner system within 48 hours. After that, the siege of Earth itself would begin. Humanity's home world had been transformed into a fortress over the past 6 months. Orbital defense platforms bristled with the most advanced weapons human science could produce. The lunar bases had been converted into missile batteries. Even Mars had been stripped of its defensive assets to reinforce Earth's protection grid. It wouldn't be enough. Kane knew it, the president knew it, and deep down, every human in the solar system knew it. The hegemony had demonstrated technological superiority that bordered on magic. Their weapons were centuries ahead of human technology. Their tactics suggested an understanding of human psychology that was deeply unsettling, and their biological ships seemed to actually learn and adapt from each engagement. The quantum communicator chimed again. Kane's heart raced as he opened the new transmission, quickly running it through the decryption protocols. Package intact, but modified. Sender has new data on hostile intentions. Recommend immediate extraction to secure location. Warning: hostiles have detailed human tactical databases. This is not a coincidence. Kane stared at the message for several seconds, letting the implications sink in. If Sarah was suggesting that the hegemony had somehow acquired detailed information about human military tactics, it would explain their uncanny ability to counter every strategy. But how is such a thing possible? His hands shook slightly as he composed another reply. Extraction authorized. Provide coordinates for pickup. Priority 1 clearance granted for immediate return. While he waited for Sarah's response, Kane began activating protocols that hadn't been used since the darkest days of the Centauri campaign. He opened a direct channel to fleet intelligence and began requisitioning assets for a deep space extraction mission. The operation would require significant resources at a time, when every ship was desperately needed for Earth defense. But if Sarah had information that could explain the hegemony's advantages, it might be their only hope. The final message came through 20 minutes later, containing a set of coordinates deep within the Kepler Nebula. The location was almost exactly where Sarah's ship had disappeared 2 years ago, in a region that subsequent surveys had found completely empty. Kane stood and walked to his personal safe, inputting the complex biometric locks that protected his most classified materials. Inside, among various operational documents and command codes, he found what he was looking for: a single data crystal containing the complete mission briefing for Operation Distant Shore, Sarah Chen's original assignment. As he held the crystal up to the light, Kane reflected on the irony of the situation. 2 years ago, he'd sent Sarah into the unknown to gather intelligence on potential alien threats. Now, with humanity facing extinction, she might be their only hope for survival. The question that terrified him was simple: what had happened to her during those 2 missing years, and what had she become in the process of gathering that intelligence? The Admiral began preparing for what might be the most important mission of his career. In 12 hours, he would personally lead a small task force into the Kepler Nebula to retrieve Sarah Chen. Whether she was still the woman he'd sent on that mission, or something else entirely, remained to be seen. But as the hegemony fleet continued its advance toward Earth, and as humanity's defenses crumbled one by one, Kane knew he had no choice but to trust in the one person who might understand their enemy well enough to defeat them. Outside his viewport, the stars burned cold and distant, indifferent to the fate of the species that had dared to reach out and touch the cosmos. In less than 2 days, those same stars would witness either humanity's greatest victory or its final extinction. The Ghost was coming home. The extraction fleet consisted of 3 ships, carefully selected for stealth and speed rather than firepower. Kane commanded from the bridge of the TDS Shadowhawk, a modified reconnaissance cruiser equipped with the latest generation stealth systems. Flanking them were the destroyers Phantom and Wraith, their hulls painted in sensor-absorbing black and bristling with electronic countermeasures. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Torres, Kane's hand-picked navigation officer, plotted their course through the cosmic maze of the Kepler Nebula. The region was a navigator's nightmare: swirling clouds of ionized gas, electromagnetic storms that could blind sensors for hours, and gravitational anomalies that could crush a ship's hull like an aluminum can. "Sir, we're approaching the outer edge of the nebula," Torres reported, her voice steady despite the tension that filled the bridge. "Passive sensors are detecting the usual interference patterns, but nothing that suggests artificial activity." Kane nodded, studying the holographic display that showed their target coordinates. The location Sarah had transmitted was deep within the nebula's heart, in a region so dense with charged particles that conventional sensors would be virtually useless. It was the perfect place for someone to hide, whether they were human or something else entirely. "Take us to stealth configuration," Kane ordered. "All non-essential systems offline. Maintain minimal life support and communications only." The bridge lights dimmed as the Shadowhawk transformed into a ghost ship, its energy signature reduced to background radiation levels. Similar transformations were taking place aboard the escort destroyers, turning the small fleet into shadows within shadows. As they penetrated deeper into the nebula, Kane found himself thinking about the woman they'd come to find. Sarah Chun had been born on Luna Colony 7, the daughter of terraforming engineers who'd spent their lives making dead worlds suitable for human habitation. She'd inherited their analytical mind and their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. During the Centauri campaign, when separatist forces had nearly succeeded in cutting off Earth from its outer colonies, Sarah had developed the tactical innovations that allowed smaller human fleets to outmaneuver and defeat larger enemy formations. Her understanding of three-dimensional warfare in zero gravity had revolutionized space combat doctrine. But more than her tactical brilliance, Kane remembered her humanity. During the siege of New Geneva Station, when civilian evacuation ships were trapped behind enemy lines, Sarah had personally led a rescue mission that saved over 50,000 people. She'd risked her career and her life because she couldn't accept the military assessment that those civilians were acceptable losses. Now, as they searched for her in this cosmic graveyard, Kane wondered what 2 years of isolation might have done to that remarkable woman. What had she seen in the depths of the nebula? What had she learned about the aliens that would eventually become the hegemony? And, most importantly, was she still fundamentally human after whatever experiences she'd endured? Contact on passive sensors, announced Chief Petty Officer Williams from the sensor station. Bearing 27 Mark IV, approximately 50,000 kilometers. It's artificial, sir, but the signature is unusual. Kane moved to the sensor console, studying the faint readings that filtered through the nebula's interference. Whatever they were detecting was definitely not natural, but it didn't match any known human ship classification. The energy patterns were too smooth, too organic somehow. Can you get more detail without going to active scans? Kane asked. Williams manipulated his controls, trying to extract more information from the passive sensors. It's difficult through all this interference, sir, but the object appears to be approximately 200 meters in length. The whole composition is... I'm not sure how to describe it, sir. It's not showing up as metal or composite materials. Almost like it's made of some kind of biological substance. Kane felt a chill that had nothing to do with the reduced life support systems. A biological ship could mean several things, none of them particularly comforting. It could be a hegemony vessel, which would mean they'd walk directly into a trap. Or it could be something else entirely, something that had been hiding in the nebula long before either humans or the hegemony had arrived. Sir, incoming transmission, reported Communications Specialist Park. It's on the frequency we've been monitoring, same encryption protocols. The message is, it's just coordinates, sir. They match our current heading, but they're directing us to approach from a specific vector. Kane studied the tactical display, noting how the suggested approach would bring them in behind a particularly dense cloud of ionized gas, effectively screening their arrival from any potential observers. It was exactly the kind of tactical thinking he'd expect from Sarah Chun. Follow the suggested approach vector, he ordered, but keep all weapons systems on standby. If this goes wrong, I want to be able to fight our way out. The Shadowhawk adjusted course, gliding silently through the cosmic fog with its escort ships maintaining formation. As they drew closer to the coordinates, the mysterious vessel began to resolve in greater detail. What they saw challenged every assumption about spacecraft design and construction. The ship appeared to be grown rather than built, its hull flowing in organic curves that seemed to shift and adapt to the surrounding environment. Sensor readings confirmed Williams' initial assessment. The vessel was composed primarily of biological materials, but materials unlike anything in human scientific databases. My God, whispered Torres, staring at the main display. It's beautiful. She was right. The ship possessed an alien elegance that was both terrifying and magnificent. Its surface seemed to pulse with bioluminescent patterns that might have been purely decorative or might serve some unknown technological function. Strange appendages extended from the hull like the tendrils of some deep-sea creature, gently swaying in the solar wind. "Sir, we're receiving a new transmission," Park reported. "Same encryption, but this time it's a voice signal." Kane's heart hammered in his chest. After 2 years of wondering, he was about to hear Sarah's voice again. Put it through. The speakers crackled with static from the nebula's interference, but beneath the cosmic noise, a familiar voice emerged. It was definitely Sarah, but there was something different about her speech patterns, a cadence that seemed slightly off. "Admiral Kane, I assume you're leading the extraction team personally. You always were too stubborn to send someone else into unknown territory." There was warmth in her voice, but also something else, a distance that spoke of experiences that had fundamentally changed her. "Sarah," Kane replied, keying his own transmitter. "It's good to hear your voice again. We've come to bring you home." A pause, filled with cosmic static. When Sarah's voice returned, it carried a note of sadness that cut Kane to the core. "Home. Yes, I suppose Earth is still my home, regardless of what I've become. Admiral, there are things you need to know before we proceed. The situation is far more complex than you realize. We're listening. The beings you know as the hegemony aren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They're gardeners. They've been watching human expansion for centuries, waiting for us to reach a specific level of technological development. What's happening to Earth right now is a test." Kane exchanged glances with his bridge crew. The implications of Sarah's words were staggering. If the alien invasion was actually some kind of evaluation, it changed everything about humanity's response strategy. "What kind of test?" Kane asked. "They want to see if humanity is worthy of joining a galactic confederation of species. But their criteria for worthiness aren't what you might expect. They're not looking for technological advancement or military prowess. They're evaluating our ability to adapt, to think beyond conventional parameters, and to make decisions that benefit the species rather than individuals." Torres looked up from her navigation console. "Sir, we're being scanned. The biological ship is running some kind of sensor sweep over our entire formation." "It's all right," Sarah's voice assured them. "The ship's biosystems are simply verifying that you haven't brought any hostile intentions. The technology can actually read emotional states and neural patterns through bioelectromagnetic emissions. It's how I've been able to survive here for 2 years." "Sarah, you're saying that ship is alive?" Kane asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Not alive in the way we understand life, but not artificial either. It's a hybrid technology, combining biological neural networks with quantum computational matrices. The hegemony has been developing these systems for thousands of years. They grow their ships, Admiral. Each vessel is a unique entity with its own personality and capabilities." The implications were overwhelming. If the hegemony possessed technology that could create living starships, their capabilities were far beyond anything human science had imagined. But more disturbing was the suggestion that they'd been observing humanity for centuries, carefully orchestrating events to bring about this moment of testing. "The ship is extending a docking tube," Torres reported. "Biomechanical construction, completely flexible. It's actually reaching out to us." On the main display, they watched as a tendril of living metal extended from the alien vessel, approaching the Shadowhawk's main airlock with surprising gentleness. The docking procedure was unlike anything in human experience. The alien tube actually molded itself to match their airlock configuration, forming a perfect seal without any mechanical interfaces. "Admiral, I'm coming aboard," Sarah announced. "But I need to warn you about what you're going to see." The process of learning to communicate with the hegemony ships required modifications. "I'm still human, but I'm also something more now." Kane felt a mixture of anticipation and dread as he waited by the airlock. Whatever had happened to Sarah during her time in the nebula, it had clearly changed her in fundamental ways. The question was whether those changes had enhanced her humanity or replaced it with something else entirely. The airlock cycled, and Sarah Chun stepped through the doorway. At first glance, She looked much as Kane remembered her. Still the compact, efficient officer with intelligent dark eyes and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a regulation bun. But as she moved closer, the changes became apparent. Her skin had a subtle, luminescent quality, as if lit from within by some internal energy source. Her eyes, while still recognizably human, held depths that seemed to reflect the vast distances of interstellar space. Most unsettling of all were the thin, silver lines that traced across her temples and down her neck, pulsing gently with the rhythm of her heartbeat. "Hello, Marcus," she said, and her voice carried harmonics that no human throat should have been able to produce. "Thank you for coming. We have very little time, and there's so much you need to understand about what's really happening to our species." Kane stepped forward, studying the woman who had once been like a daughter to him. Whatever she had become during those 2 missing years, she was still recognizably Sarah Chun. But she was also something new, something that represented either humanity's greatest hope or its most terrifying transformation. "Welcome back," he said simply. "Now tell me how we save our people." In the conference room aboard the Shadowhawk, Sarah Chun sat across from Kane and his senior officers, the silver lines along her temples pulsing softly in the dim lighting. The sight was both fascinating and deeply unsettling. She was recognizably the woman they'd known, yet fundamentally transformed by her experiences. "The ship I arrived in is called Synthesis," Sarah began, her voice carrying those strange harmonics that suggested her vocal cords had been somehow modified. "It's not just a vessel. It's a living entity with its own consciousness, its own memories spanning thousands of years. For the past 2 years, it has been teaching me to understand the true nature of the galaxy we live in." Kane leaned forward, his weathered face etched with concern. "Sarah, what happened to you when you disappeared? Our sensors detected nothing, no trace of your ship or any alien activity in that region." Sarah's luminescent eyes seemed to look through him, as if seeing events that transcended normal space-time. "I found what you sent me to find, Admiral. The Watchers in the nebula. But they weren't hiding from us, they were waiting. My arrival triggered protocols that had been in place for over 300 years, ever since humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel." She gestured, and somehow her movement caused holographic displays to appear in the air around them, showing star maps and data that no human technology should have been able to project. The information was staggering in its scope. Detailed surveys of human space, behavioral analyses of human societies, even predictive models for human technological development. "The hegemony has been studying us since we left Earth," Sarah continued. "Every human colony, every expansion, every war we've fought has been carefully documented and analyzed. They've been waiting for us to reach what they call the threshold of consideration, the point where a species becomes advanced enough to potentially join the galactic community." Lieutenant Commander Torres stared at the holographic displays, her face pale with shock. "This data, some of these star charts show regions we haven't even explored yet. How is this possible? The hegemony exists in a state that transcends linear time as we understand it," Sarah explained, her modified voice carrying undertones that seemed to resonate directly in their bones. "Their consciousness operates across multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously. They don't just observe the present. They can perceive potential futures, probability cascades, the branching paths that different choices create." Kane felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "You're saying they can see the future?" "Not exactly see it, but they can perceive the quantum probability structures that underlie causality itself. It's how they've been able to anticipate and counter every human military strategy. They're not just fighting our current tactics, they're fighting all the possible tactics we might develop." The implications were staggering. If the hegemony could perceive multiple potential timelines, conventional military strategy became meaningless. No wonder human fleets had been systematically destroyed. The aliens were fighting with knowledge of not just current human capabilities, but all possible future developments of those capabilities. But There's something they didn't anticipate, Sarah continued, the silver lines on her temples pulsing more rapidly. The modifications I've undergone, the integration with synthesis, has created something new. A human consciousness that can operate partially outside their temporal perception matrix. Kane studied her carefully. What kind of modifications, Sarah? She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, there was profound sadness in her voice. In order to communicate with synthesis and learn about hegemony technology, I had to allow biological integration with the ship's neural systems. The process changed me at the cellular level, rewiring my brain to process information in ways that human consciousness was never designed for. She held up her hand, and they could see the silver tracework wasn't just on her skin. It extended beneath the surface, forming intricate patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. These aren't just decorative marks. They're living neural interfaces, quantum processors that allow me to think in multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously. "Are you still human?" asked Chief Williams, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman Kane remembered. "I'm still me, Williams. Still the officer who used to beat you at chess in a mess hall. But I'm also something more now. I can perceive the quantum structures underlying reality, understand the probability matrices that the hegemony uses to predict future events." Kane felt a mixture of relief and profound loss. The Sarah Chun he'd known was still there, but she'd been transformed into something that transcended normal human existence. The question was whether that transformation would be enough to save humanity. "What did you learn about the tests they're conducting?" Kane asked. The holographic displays shifted, showing detailed analyses of recent battles between human forces and the hegemony fleet. "They're not trying to destroy us, Admiral. Every engagement has been carefully calculated to push humanity to its limits without causing complete extinction. They want to see how we adapt when conventional strategies fail." "Adapt how?" "They're looking for evidence that humanity can transcend its biological limitations, that we can evolve beyond purely physical existence. The hegemony itself underwent this transformation millions of years ago. They became something between organic life and pure consciousness, able to exist across multiple dimensional matrices simultaneously." Torres looked up from the data displays, her face reflecting a mixture of awe and terror. "They want us to become like them. They want to see if we're capable of it," Sarah corrected. "The Galactic Confederation consists of species that have all undergone similar transformations. Physical existence is considered a primitive state, something that intelligent life naturally evolves beyond given sufficient time and pressure." Kane felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place. That's why their ships seem alive, why their technology appears biological rather than mechanical. Exactly. The distinction between organic and artificial becomes meaningless when consciousness itself can be restructured and enhanced. Their ships aren't built, they're grown, evolved, designed at the cellular level to be extensions of their pilot's consciousness. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was being tested not for military prowess or technological advancement, but for its ability to transcend the limitations of purely biological existence. The question was whether such a transformation was possible without losing the fundamental qualities that made them human. "Sarah," Kane said slowly, "what happens if we fail their test?" Her luminescent eyes met his, and he saw depths of knowledge that no human should possess. "They will withdraw from this region of space and place it under quarantine. Humanity will be left to develop naturally, but will never be allowed to expand beyond our current territory. We'll become an isolated species, cut off from the greater galactic community forever. And if we pass, we'll be offered membership in a confederation that spans most of the galaxy, access to technologies, and knowledge that could transform human civilization in ways we can barely imagine. But the price is accepting fundamental changes to what we are as a species. Kane stood and paced to the viewport, looking out at the swirling gases of the nebula. In the distance, he could see the organic curves of synthesis, the living ship that had become Sarah's partner and teacher. The vessel pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns, as if it were breathing in the cosmic wind. "How much time do we have?" he asked. "The hegemony fleet will reach Earth in approximately 36 hours, Sarah replied. "When they arrive, they'll begin the final phase of the evaluation. Earth's defense systems will be tested beyond their limits, and humanity will be forced to make a choice." "What kind of choice?" "Whether to accept the transformation that membership in the Galactic Confederation requires, or to maintain our current form and accept isolation. The decision must be made by humanity as a whole, not by its leaders or governments." Kane turned back to face her. "How was that possible? How can an entire species make such a decision?" Sarah's smile was both sad and hopeful. The same technology that allows the hegemony to perceive multiple timelines can be used to create a collective consciousness experience. Every human being on Earth, on Luna, in the colonies, all of them will be connected temporarily to a shared neural network that will allow them to experience the full implications of both choices. "And you can facilitate this?" "Synthesis and I together, yes. But it requires returning to Earth and interfacing with the planetary communication networks. The process will permanently change both of us. We'll become permanent bridges between human consciousness and the Galactic Confederation's neural matrix." Kane studied the woman who had once been his protege, seeing the vast intelligence that now resided behind her transformed features. "You're talking about sacrificing your individual existence to save the human species." "I'm talking about evolving beyond the limitations that individual existence represents," Sarah corrected gently. "The question is whether humanity is ready to follow that path, or whether we'll choose to remain what we are and accept the consequences." Kane made his decision. "We go back to Earth. Whatever the cost, we give our people the chance to choose their own future." Sarah nodded, and the silver patterns on her skin pulsed brighter. "Then, we need to leave immediately. The hegemony knows about this conversation, about your presence here. They'll be adjusting their timeline accordingly. They know we're here. Admiral, they've known about everything we've discussed. The test includes evaluating how humans respond when they discover the true nature of their situation. Your decision to return to Earth and facilitate the choice process is exactly what they hope to see." Kane felt a chill as he realized the full scope of their situation. Even this conversation, even his decisions, were part of the elaborate evaluation that would determine humanity's future. The question that remained was whether that knowledge would help them pass the test, or whether it made failure even more likely. As the small fleet prepared to leave the nebula and race back to Earth, none of them could have imagined that their journey was being observed by entities whose perception transcended the normal boundaries of space and time, beings who had waited centuries to see whether humanity would prove worthy of joining the greater cosmic community. The final test was about to begin. The journey back to Earth took 18 hours through hyperspace, the small fleet racing ahead of the advancing hegemony armada. Kane spent most of the transit in intense consultation with Sarah and synthesis, learning about the neural interface technology that would be required to give humanity its ultimate choice. The living ship had somehow integrated itself with the Shadowhawk systems, creating hybrid biotechnological connections that allowed unprecedented computational capabilities. Watching Sarah interface directly with the ship's consciousness was both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. Her eyes would roll back to show only luminescent white as data flowed through the silver neural pathways visible beneath her skin. "The process will be traumatic for most humans," Sarah explained during one of her periods of normal consciousness. "Temporary connection to a galactic-level neural network isn't something the human brain was designed to handle. But it's the only way for people to truly understand what they're choosing between." Kane studied the technical specifications that synthesis had provided, displayed on holographic screens that seemed to exist halfway between dimensions. How many casualties are we looking at? Synthesis estimates approximately 12% of the human population will suffer permanent neurological damage from the interface process. Another 6% may not survive the experience at all. Sarah's voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. But without the choice, without the ability to truly comprehend what joining the Galactic Confederation means, humanity would be making a decision based on incomplete information. Lieutenant Commander Torres looked up from the navigation display. Sir, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth. The Hegemony fleet has appeared at the edge of the solar system. Fleet Command is requesting immediate tactical consultation. Kane activated the long-range communications array, connecting with Admiral Martinez aboard the TDS Enterprise, flagship of Earth's defense fleet. The holographic image showed a man aged beyond his years by months of desperate warfare, his face etched with the knowledge that conventional tactics had completely failed. Marcus, thank God you're back, Martinez said without preamble. The Hegemony fleet is massive, over 300 bioships, each one larger than our biggest dreadnoughts. They've taken position just outside the asteroid belt, and they're waiting. No aggressive moves, no demands, just waiting. They're waiting for us to make the final preparations, Kane explained. Admiral, I need you to patch me through to Fleet Command, the President, and the Secretary General of the United Nations. What I'm about to tell you will change everything about how we understand this situation. The next few hours were among the most difficult in Kane's career as he attempted to explain the true nature of humanity's situation to military and civilian leaders who could barely accept the existence of hostile aliens, let alone a galaxy-spanning confederation of evolved species offering membership based on transcendence of biological limitations. President Chun, no relation to Sarah, despite the shared surname, listened to Kane's briefing with the stone-faced expression that had carried her through 6 months of the most catastrophic war in human history. Admiral Kane, you're asking me to believe that this invasion is actually some kind of cosmic job interview? Madam President, I'm asking you to consider that we have approximately 4 hours to give every human being in the solar system a choice that will determine the future of our entire species. Secretary General Okafor leaned forward on the holographic display. The technical requirements you've outlined are staggering. Connecting every communication network on Earth, Luna, Mars, and the outer colonies to create a single neural interface system. Even if it's possible, the logistics alone. Synthesis will handle the technical integration, Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying harmonics that made the communication equipment resonate strangely. The ship's consciousness can interface with any quantum-based communication system, but we need political authorization to override every privacy protocol and communications firewall in human space. The debate that followed was intense and brief, with the Hegemony fleet maintaining its ominous vigil at the edge of the solar system. There was little time for extended political consultation. Within 2 hours, emergency powers had been invoked, and Sarah was given access to Earth's primary communication satellites. The integration process began as soon as the Shadowhawk entered Earth's orbital space. Synthesis extended neural interface tendrils that connected with communication arrays throughout the solar system, creating a vast web of biotechnological connections that pulsed with alien intelligence. Kane watched from the bridge as Sarah underwent the final phase of her transformation. The silver pathways beneath her skin blazed with brilliant light as she became a living conduit between human consciousness and the Galactic Confederation's neural matrix. Her individual identity began to blur, expanding beyond the boundaries of her physical form to encompass vast networks of quantum-linked awareness. Admiral, she said, her voice now carrying overtones from dozens of different dimensional frequencies, the network is ready. In 60 minutes, every human being in the solar system will experience temporary integration with the galactic consciousness. They will understand, with perfect clarity, what both choices entail. What will they see? Everything. The full scope of the Galactic Confederation, the technologies and knowledge available to member species, the cost of transcendence, and the consequences of remaining purely biological. They'll experience potential futures where humanity joins the Confederation and alternative timelines where we remain isolated. The choice will be made with complete information. Cain felt a mixture of pride and profound loss as he looked at what Sarah had become. The woman who had been like a daughter to him was still there, but she was also something vastly more, a bridge between two completely different forms of existence. "Sir, the hegemony fleet is moving," reported Torres. "All vessels are approaching Earth. ETA in 30 minutes. On the main display, they watched as 300 bioships began their final approach to humanity's homeworld. The vessels moved with organic grace, their living hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that suggested communication between the ships and whatever intelligences guided them. "They're positioning themselves to observe the choice process," Sarah explained. "Every member species of the Confederation went through a similar evaluation when they reached the threshold of consideration. The hegemony serves as both judge and guide for species undergoing this transformation." Cain activated fleet-wide communications, addressing every human ship in the solar system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Cain. In approximately 20 minutes, every human being will experience what can only be described as expanded consciousness. Do not be alarmed. This is not an attack. It's an opportunity to understand our situation and make an informed choice about our future. Maintain positions and await further orders." The countdown proceeded with inexorable precision. Cain found himself thinking about humanity's journey from a single world to a species spanning dozens of star systems. The wars fought, the knowledge gained, the dreams pursued across the vast distances of interstellar space. All of it had led to this moment when the species would choose between transcendence and isolation. "Initiating network integration," Sarah announced, her form now blazing with neural energy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. All human consciousness connecting to galactic matrix in 3, 2. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Every human being in the solar system, from the president in her secure bunker to children playing in Luna Colony 7's recreation domes, suddenly found their consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of individual awareness. Cain experienced the transformation as a gradual dissolution of his sense of self, replaced by something vastly larger and more complex. He could perceive the thoughts and emotions of billions of other humans as they underwent the same expansion of consciousness. More startling still, he could sense the vast alien intelligences that comprised the Galactic Confederation, beings whose thoughts operated on scales that dwarfed human comprehension. Through this expanded awareness, he saw potential futures spreading out like quantum probability trees. In one timeline, humanity accepted transcendence and joined the Galactic Confederation. Their consciousness evolved beyond biological limitations, gaining access to technologies that allowed manipulation of space and time themselves. Disease, aging, and death became obsolete concepts as human awareness expanded to encompass multiple dimensional matrices. But he also saw what would be lost in that transformation: the messy, chaotic, passionate nature of purely biological existence would disappear. Art, literature, music, and philosophy would be replaced by forms of expression that transcended physical reality but lost the emotional intensity that came from minds housed in vulnerable flesh. The alternative timeline showed humanity choosing isolation. They would remain biologically human, continuing to grow and develop within the confines of their current form. But they would be forever cut off from the greater galactic community, limited to their small corner of space, while vast civilizations explored dimensions of existence beyond human comprehension. Both futures had their own beauty and their own tragedy. The choice was not between good and evil, but between two fundamentally different concepts of what it meant to be human. Through the neural network, Cain could sense the collective consciousness of humanity struggling with this unprecedented decision. Some minds embraced the possibility of transcendence, excited by the prospect of unlimited knowledge and dimensional travel. Others recoiled from the idea of losing their fundamental humanity, preferring isolation to transformation. The debate raged across billions of connected minds, carried out at the speed of thought through neural pathways that spanned the entire solar system. Arguments, emotions, fears, and hopes flowed between consciousness like currents in a vast ocean of awareness. And through it all, Kane could sense the patient observation of the hegemony, evaluating not just humanity's final choice, but the process by which that choice was made. The aliens were judging whether humans could handle the responsibilities that came with membership in a civilization that transcended the normal limits of space and time. The network integration lasted exactly 1 hour. When it ended, when individual consciousness reasserted itself throughout the solar system, the choice had been made. Kane felt Sarah's presence return to something approaching normal human awareness, though she remained forever changed by her role as the bridge between two forms of existence. "The decision is complete," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of billions of individual choices synthesized into a single collective will. Humanity has chosen. Kane waited, knowing that whatever the outcome, the universe would never be the same for the human species. The age of purely biological existence was ending one way or another. The question was whether it would end in transcendence or in acceptance of eternal limitation. "Tell me," he said simply. Sarah smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman who had vanished 2 years ago in the Kepler Nebula. "We're going home, Admiral, to a home larger than we ever imagined possible." The transformation began immediately. Across the solar system, the hegemony bioships approached human vessels and installations, not as conquerors but as teachers. The aliens' living technology interfaced with human systems, beginning the delicate process of evolution that would elevate humanity to membership in the Galactic Confederation. Kane stood on the observation deck of the Shadowhawk, watching as one of the massive bioships approached Earth's primary orbital station. The alien vessel extended neural tendrils that connected with the station's communications array, and within minutes, the entire structure began to change. Metal and composite materials flowed like liquid, reorganizing themselves into organic curves that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. "The process is irreversible," Sarah explained, though she was now something far beyond the individual consciousness that Kane had known. She existed simultaneously in her physical form and as a distributed intelligence throughout the neural network that connected all transforming humans. Every human who chooses to undergo enhancement will retain their core personality and memories, but their capacity for consciousness will expand exponentially. Kane watched as similar transformations occurred throughout the solar system. On Luna, the mining colonies were being converted into biotechnological gardens where human consciousness could explore new forms of existence. Mars's terraforming stations evolved into vast neural networks that allowed enhanced humans to experience collective thought processes spanning the entire planet. "What about those who chose not to transform?" Kane asked. "Approximately 18% of humanity decided to remain in their current biological state," Sarah replied, her voice now carrying harmonics from across the dimensional spectrum. "They've been relocated to specially prepared worlds in the Outer Rim territories, where they can continue to develop naturally without interference from Confederation technology." Kane felt a profound sense of loss at the thought of humanity being divided, but he understood the necessity. The choice between transcendence and biological preservation had been genuine. No one could be forced to undergo the transformation, and no one could be denied it if they were willing to accept the consequences. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Torres called from the bridge, "I'm receiving integration offers from the primary bioship. They're asking if I want to join the enhanced navigation consciousness. I would retain my identity, but I'd be able to perceive space and time in ways that would revolutionize interstellar travel. Kane looked at Torres, seeing the mixture of excitement and fear in her eyes. The young officer had always been brilliant at spatial navigation, able to plot courses through complex gravitational fields that challenged even the most advanced computer systems. The prospect of enhanced consciousness would allow her to navigate not just through three-dimensional space, but through the quantum probability structures that underlay reality itself. "The choice is yours, Commander," Kane said gently. "I can't make this decision for anyone." Torres nodded, took a deep breath, and activated her personal communicator. "This is Lieutenant Commander Torres to Hegemony Vessel 7. I accept integration with the enhanced navigation consciousness." Kane watched through the viewport as a tendril of living light extended from the bioship, passing through the Shadowhawk's hull as if the metal were merely an optical illusion. When the tendril touched Torres, she gasped, and her eyes blazed with the same luminescent patterns that marked Sarah's transformation. For a moment, Torres stood perfectly still, and Kane feared that something had gone wrong. Then, she turned toward him, and he saw that while she was still recognizably the officer he'd known, she was also something magnificently more. Her awareness now encompassed not just the local space around their ship, but quantum probability networks extending across the entire galaxy. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying new harmonics of consciousness, "I can see the pathways between stars, the currents of space-time itself. It's beautiful beyond anything I could have imagined." One by one, Kane watched his crew undergo their own transformations. Chief Williams chose to join the enhanced engineering consciousness, gaining the ability to interface directly with biotechnological systems and understand the quantum mechanics underlying matter manipulation. Communications Specialist Park integrated with the Galactic Information Network, becoming a living conduit for data exchange between civilizations separated by millions of light years. Kane found himself standing alone on the bridge, the last unenhanced human among his crew. The choice was before him now: undergo the transformation that would grant him capabilities beyond human imagination, or remain as he was and accept separation from the people he'd served with for decades. "Admiral," Sarah's voice resonated through the ship's communication system, though she was physically present throughout the neural network rather than in any specific location. "There's something you need to understand about the choice you're facing. Tell me, the enhancement isn't just about gaining new capabilities. It's about accepting responsibility for the welfare of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Enhanced humans become part of a collective intelligence that guides the development of younger species, protects vulnerable civilizations, and maintains the balance of the cosmic ecosystem." Kane considered this. Throughout his career, he dedicated himself to protecting humanity and ensuring the species' survival. The prospect of expanding that responsibility to encompass the welfare of all conscious life in the galaxy was both terrifying and compelling. What happens to individual identity in this collective consciousness? "It's preserved and enhanced," Sarah assured him. "I'm still Sarah Chun, still the officer who served under you for 15 years. But I'm also part of something larger, something that allows me to perceive the connections between all living things." Individual consciousness doesn't disappear. It becomes part of a symphony of awareness that spans the galaxy. Kane walked to the main viewport, looking out at Earth below. The planet was transforming as he watched, its cities evolving into biotechnological structures that pulsed with the rhythms of enhanced human consciousness. The orbital defense platforms that had been humanity's last hope against the supposed invasion were being converted into neural relay stations that would allow Earth to communicate instantaneously with civilizations on the far side of the galaxy. "Admiral," Torres said softly, her enhanced awareness allowing her to perceive his emotional state through quantum bioelectromagnetic patterns. "The transformation is voluntary, but it's also inevitable. Humanity has chosen to join the Galactic Confederation. Those who undergo enhancement will help guide the species through its transition to cosmic citizenship. Kane made his decision. Computer, open a channel to the primary hegemony vessel. Channel open, Admiral. This is Admiral Marcus Kane, requesting integration with the enhanced command consciousness. The response was immediate. The bioship extended a neural tendril that passed through the ship's hull and approached Kane with surprising gentleness. As it touched him, Kane felt his awareness expand beyond the boundaries of his individual consciousness. The transformation was overwhelming and wonderful. Kane's perception exploded outward, encompassing not just the solar system, but vast networks of consciousness spanning the galaxy. He could sense the thoughts and experiences of billions of enhanced beings, each one unique, yet part of a greater collective intelligence that worked to maintain peace and foster growth throughout the cosmos. But even as his consciousness expanded, Kane retained his core identity. He was still the officer who had dedicated his life to protecting humanity, still the mentor who had guided young officers like Sarah Chun toward greatness. The difference was that his protective instincts now encompassed not just his own species, but all conscious life in the galaxy. Through his enhanced awareness, Kane could perceive the vast scope of the Galactic Confederation. Millions of worlds hosted civilizations at various stages of development, from primitive societies just beginning to explore their home systems to ancient intelligences that existed as pure consciousness distributed across multiple dimensional matrices. "Welcome to the Confederation, Admiral," said a voice that carried the harmonics of countless enhanced consciousnesses. It was the collective greeting of every species that had undergone the transformation, a welcoming chorus that spanned thousands of different evolutionary paths, but shared the common goal of fostering consciousness throughout the universe. Kane found that he could respond through the neural network, his thoughts becoming part of the vast conversation that connected all enhanced beings. It's an honor to serve at this level. What are humanity's responsibilities as the newest member species? Your species has unique qualities that will benefit the Confederation, the collective voice replied. Human consciousness retains a powerful connection to biological emotion and physical creativity even after enhancement. This allows you to serve as bridges between purely transcendent species and those still developing in biological form. Through the neural network, Kane could see the roles that enhanced humans were already beginning to fill. They served as teachers and guides for younger species approaching their own threshold of consideration. They acted as mediators in conflicts between civilizations that had evolved along different consciousness paths. Most importantly, they helped maintain the balance between transcendent growth and respect for the value of biological existence. Sarah's consciousness touched his through the network, and Kane felt the warmth of their old friendship enhanced by new dimensions of shared experience. "Marcus, there's something beautiful happening. Enhanced humans are naturally gravitating toward roles as protectors and nurturers of developing consciousness. It's as if our species' instinct for protecting the vulnerable has been amplified by our new capabilities." Kane could sense the truth of her observation. Throughout the network, he could perceive enhanced humans working to improve conditions for struggling civilizations, sharing knowledge with species facing existential challenges, and helping to establish peaceful contact between cultures that might otherwise have come into conflict. "Admiral, Torres's consciousness reached him through the network. We're receiving our first assignment. There's a species in the Vega system that has just achieved faster-than-light travel. They're requesting guidance from a confederation, and the collective intelligence has chosen a human team to make first contact." Kane felt a surge of excitement that was amplified by the shared enthusiasm of every consciousness in the network. This was what humanity had joined, not just access to advanced technology and cosmic knowledge, but the opportunity to help other species navigate the challenges of growth and development. "Prepare for departure," Kane responded, his thoughts automatically coordinating with enhanced humans throughout the solar system who would join a mission. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can contribute to the cosmic community. As the Shadowhawk underwent its final transformation into a biotechnological vessel capable of traversing not just space, but the quantum probability matrices that underlay reality itself, Kane reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Sarah's disappearance 2 years ago had seemed like a tragedy, but it had been the first step in humanity's evolution toward cosmic citizenship. The species that had once been confined to a single world now existed as part of a galactic consciousness that spanned millions of civilizations. They had not lost their humanity in the process. They had expanded it to encompass responsibilities and capabilities beyond anything their ancestors could have imagined. Through the viewport of his transformed ship, Kane could see Earth below, its surface now pulsing with the bioluminescent patterns of enhanced human consciousness. But he could also perceive, through his expanded awareness, the millions of other worlds where consciousness was developing, growing, reaching toward the stars with the same hopes and dreams that had once driven humanity to leave its home planet. The universe was vast and filled with wonders beyond imagination. And now, humanity had the opportunity and responsibility to help other species discover those wonders for themselves. The greatest adventure was just beginning.